have a different kid every single day. I'm a different mom every single day. I have to parent the child in front of me.
How many kids you have?
I have two daughters, 5 and 10.
Wow, that's beautiful. I have 2 daughters as well, 3 and 6.
I'm a math and science guy. I love data.
Don't fix the problem, show them how to fix the problem.
Today we have a very special guest, Destini and Davis, a certified parent coach, author, and TEDx speaker. With 1.5 million followers on TikTok, Destini is a force to be reckoned within the world of parenting. Known for her compassionate and relatable approach, she has helped countless parents find their own path to peaceful parenting and positive discipline. She is also the author of Very Intentional Parenting and has given a TEDx talk titled No Bad Kids.
Is there any advice that you can share to first-time fathers, a father to be?
If you want to raise a daughter that makes good decisions, you have to focus not on the behavior, but on her self-esteem.
If I'm not saying to my child that she's beautiful, she's perfect, she'll say, okay, that's normal.
Do not take it personally. Oh my goodness. Our kids aren't being manipulative or malicious. They just have different priorities.
Destini, welcome to the show.
The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics, including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. Here are your hosts, Anayet Chowdhury and Vlad Suleiman.
I would like to know, how did you first become passionate about parenting, and what led you to become a certified parent coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a lot of parents, I went into parenting thinking that like some instincts were going to kick in, and all of the life experiences I had were just leading me to this pinnacle moment, and I was going to know what to do. And I was completely clueless, and it was just very difficult for me. And as I started to gain new tools and develop strategies, I wanted to share that, because it's not inherent, especially moms. We kind of have this notion that, moms are supposed to check all the boxes and know what to do. And it's a very lonely experience in existence because we're not supposed to ask for help. So I kind of wanted to step into people's homes without them having to ask and share some relatable content that's actually practical and tools-based and science-based. And I think that that's what started my career on social media. And then I was like, I want to do this on an individual level. I want to be able to really make an impact. And that's when I decided to move into coaching.
Mm-hmm. How many kids you have?
I have two daughters, 5 and 10.
Wow, that's beautiful. I have 2 daughters as well, 3 and 6. And she's turning 6 in next week, so it's very nice. I know that in your book, Very Intentional Parenting, you emphasize the importance of mutual respect and shared understanding between parents and children. Can you share some practical tips on how to achieve this?
This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning edtech company serving over 1 million students nationwide. We understand that as parents, you want to ensure that your child receives the best education possible. Say hello to ArgoPrep. With over 15 plus educational awards earned in just the past year, ArgoPrep's platform offers your child video lessons, quizzes, drills, printable worksheets, and more. Best of all, your ArgoPrep subscription comes included with 4 comprehensive digital workbooks that cover all 4 subjects: math, ELA, science, and social studies. Visit ArgoPrep.com today and start your free trial.
Absolutely. I think we forget that children are still humans, and they hear no all day long. They really do. Like, you got to stand in this line. You can't drink from that water fountain. We're not doing this. They hear no all day, and it's really set up to be very disempowering. And so one of the things that I think is helpful in decreasing power struggles is realizing that our kids aren't being manipulative or malicious. They just have different priorities than us, which makes sense because they're not adults. And so in a moment where I'm saying, let's go this way, you want to go that way in the routine or whatever, if I just stop and say, okay, right now my kid is prioritizing this, which makes sense. Of course she's prioritizing play. She's 5. Of course I'm prioritizing getting out the house. I got to go to work. Just like with any relationship, where's the compromise? Where's the mutual respect? And how can we get both of those things accomplished in a way that feels good to us? And it's almost like that's just the logical thing to do. It just makes sense.
I was looking through your Instagram profile. You have incredible content on there, by the way. But the first thing that stuck out to me, which I really loved, was you with the video with your daughter, your older daughter, and you made a caption that preteens need love as well. And that's such an important topic that I want to talk about because I feel like for parents, it's easy to show love when it's a baby and when they're 3 years old and then 5 years old. And it just comes a certain point in time where your child gets so independent and that kind of showing of love kind of stops one day, right? One day you're no longer picking up your daughter and, they're already into this new world, but all the data and studies show that preteens, even teens, adults need love. Adults need love, first of all. But so imagine teens, imagine preteens. That post was so powerful, at least for me. Why is it here's my question. How can parents with preteens start showing that love again, even if they feel like, oh man, my daughter or my son won't reciprocate because that barrier, we're past that now, right?
I think that's a really good question. What I will say is that if you can find a way to regulate your own emotions, to not feel manipulated, the best way to connect and the best time to connect is often when they're asking for it in the worst ways. They are testing not just us. I believe that in that phase, they are really testing the truth of our relationship. And if we really are the leaders in the house, that's why they test the boundaries, because we still need to be firm on them. But also, they're going to test our love and our compassion towards them. And I think I have found that when my daughter is having her hardest moments, that's actually when she's the most open to connection. When she comes home from school, she's in her own world. And I'm like, let's play a game. She's like, girl, bye. But when she's like in the morning when she's like, I don't want to go to school, blah, blah, blah. This is the worst. And I'm just like, come here, give me a hug. Like, what's up? We didn't do this yesterday. What's going on? Like, let's just go sit on the couch for a second. Tell me about the dream you had last night or whatever. She's so open to it. And so I think that if you're struggling with your teens, remember that they're going to ask for it in the worst ways. And that's when they need it the most.
Wow, that's actually a really good point. Wow. I want to, so I know you did a TEDx talk titled No Bad Kids, and it highlights the importance of looking beyond a child's behavior to understand the underlying causes. So kind of in the context of what you were just talking about. But can you share an example of where this approach made a significant difference, looking beyond the child's behavior and trying to understand, what is the underlying cause? Why is my daughter doing this? Or why is my son doing this?
Well, I think that that's the basis for emotional intelligence, right? Being able to recognize your needs and your emotions, somebody else's needs and emotions, and find a solution based off of that information and not just what's going on at the tip of the iceberg. And so in a practical sense, if my daughter gets in the car after school and she slams the door and I'm instantly like not conscious of how that actually made me feel, not conscious of even why she's feeling that way, I'm going to stay on the surface and I'm going to try to address the behavior. Whose door are you slamming? What's wrong with you? And that's not emotional intelligence. And that actually doesn't teach my daughter to articulate her experience. And the next time I want her to be able to get in the car and close the door and say, oh my gosh, mom, I studied so hard for that test and I failed it. And I felt so embarrassed. I was the only person that, I want her to be able to do that, but I have to model that. So when she slams the door, I have to check in and say, wow, I'm feeling like disrespected, or I'm feeling small. I'm feeling like my voice doesn't matter. Let me address that. And I can just be accepting of the emotion. It makes sense that made me angry. And we can talk about that. Something's going on beneath the surface. Let me ask her the right questions. So as she gets older, she can ask herself the right questions, and her behavior is going to reflect her knowing this is the need that I have. This is the feeling and emotion that I'm having. And there's a way to get those needs met and process those emotions that's not disrespectful to the other person.
So you have two daughters. Vlad has two daughters. My wife is pregnant now, so I will also have a daughter. So
Yay, congrats.
girls rule the world, by the way.
They do.
Girls rule the world, by the way. They really do. And his brother also has 2 daughters, and we're all 3 co-founders. So
One more on the way.
one more on the way,
Wow.
also. Another
Great.
girl. uh, but my question to you is actually some advice for the fathers. Is there any advice that you can provide or share to the first time fathers, a father to be, from a mom's perspective? Because there's so much advice out there for moms. There's everything out there for moms, but I think the knowledge and the media about being a good father, or what can a father do to support, whether it's the child or the mother, is limited, or it's out there, but but the fathers never go out and seek that
Oh, I was
information.
about to say it's there.
So do you have any advice for fathers to be?
Yes. So I'll say first that my frame of advice is coming from the support that I would desire as a partner, as in a daughter, and not me knowing anything about what it means to be a man or a father. So I'll lead with that. So the first half of that is advice towards having a daughter. And I will say that oftentimes there's a fear for men of what their daughter's going to turn out like. And sometimes that has the opposite desired effect. And what I'm saying is that if you want to raise a confident daughter, if you want to raise a daughter that makes good decisions, you have to focus not on the behavior, but on her self-esteem. That is so important. Saying the right things to your daughter, empowering her every day, reminding her that she's a good kid even when she makes mistakes. An adult that has good self-esteem, a good self-concept, is going to make good decisions more often than somebody that doesn't. So first of all, focus on empowering your child, and that's going to require you to be present and connect with them. Now, on a partner sense, I think that the moms that I speak to, their biggest concern is micromanaging and feeling like I might as well just do it myself. Because if I ask, I'm going to have to break down the task completely. There's a lot of like memes and joking videos about, if you leave the kids with dad, this is what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. And there's already just societally a high expectation on mothers. So oftentimes the pressure of parenting falls on the mom. So my advice to husbands, to fathers, to partners would be to take initiative and don't think that just completing the task is enough, but actually doing your own research, figuring out the best way to handle something and alleviating that stress and that burden.
I also think that what dad's not realizing, yes, so that they playing a role model for their future husbands of daughters, how they behave with the daughter, same way their kid will be expecting from their husband. So if I'm not saying to my child that she's beautiful, she's smart, she's perfect, if I'm not saying it, her husband also, if he'll not say it, she'll say, okay, that's normal. And I'll be saying, what the hell, he's not saying it.
Yeah.
Because I want everything the best for my daughter, right?
That happens, or the opposite will happen. And that's that the first person that affirms you in that way, regardless of their character, of anything else, you're going to cling to that person because that need has gone so chronically unmet. So yeah, both sides of the coin there.
Yeah. So I want to speak about the triggers. I know, some our kids have sometimes meltdowns, maybe not sometimes, every day. So for all the parents out there, how to recognize and manage their triggers when dealing with their child behavior?
I think that the only thing that we can do is reflect in the beginning and intentionally at the end of the day, recap what happened that day and then ask ourselves, where did that come from? What need is being unmet? Why is that even a problem for me? Is it because it goes against my values, or is it actually triggering something from my childhood? And so awareness is the first step in really being able to manage and control your triggers.
Mm-hmm. And I know you have your course titled Value-Based Boundaries, right? So
Yep.
could you please explain what it means and how it helps parents create more harmonious home environment?
Oh man, there's like this bad rep that peaceful and gentle parenting gets, that like our kids walk all over us and there are no rules and boundaries create safety for our children and create an environment for them to thrive. The problem is that oftentimes we make boundaries because of our egos or because of what's going to feel convenient for us or what society is telling us. And a lot of times it's fear, right? Like, I'm scared my kid is going to turn out like this 30 years from now. And so I'm going to set this
Right.
boundary. And so being able to sit down and say, what values are important to me, but also what values am I modeling, and then creating boundaries around them. I will tell you that one of the biggest distinctions that is helpful is that oftentimes we think that boundaries are rules. And that's going to get us in a lot of trouble, because then you're going to feel like your child is disrespecting your boundaries every day. A rule is actually something my child is in control of.
I will welcome
If
that
I
back.
say, you can't have the cookies, I'm leaving it up to them to make a rational decision. As a child, that's a rule. But if I take the cookies and they're out of reach of my 5-year-old, that's a boundary. And oftentimes parents have a ton of rules and very few boundaries, which is setting your child up for failure. If you don't have a night routine and then every night your kid doesn't want to go to bed, how are we being the leaders if we don't have the boundaries, if we don't take the remote, if we don't take the device and we're just like, turn the phone off, turn the phone off, turn the phone off. So I think that coming up with those boundaries, being able to model those boundaries and being consistent with them, and empathizing with our kids when they inevitably absolutely hate the boundaries, is crucial.
So your advice to all parents is to basically like create a contract with your kids, make a plan with them, being there and discussing together what should be done. Either it's routine before going to sleep or after waking up and so on, right?
Well, yeah, I like to think of it as this. If you had a job and every single day you came, your boss had a different expectation of you. And not only that, but their response when you didn't meet the expectation was different every day. When you came into work, you would be so on edge and you wouldn't want to collaborate. So our kids need boundaries. They need structure. They need routine. And I found that oftentimes it's easier for my children to regulate their emotions when I stick to the boundaries and to the structure in a compassionate way, of course.
So, Destiny, can you share some insights on understanding developmental appropriateness and setting realistic expectations for children at different stages of their growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of us would do good to just get like a baseline understanding of how the brain grows, and I think we'd have a little bit more grace. It's easy for us to have grace for babies because we can see visibly, like, you're too small, you can't walk. We can see where their brains are developmentally. And so when they throw the food on the floor, we're like, oh no, sweetie, that's, yeah. But then when you have the 7-year-old and you're like,
Right.
go clean your room, and then 30 minutes later their room isn't clean at all, they look capable, they're bigger. You can do so many things, you can flip around, you can play the video game, why can't you clean your room? We have no grace, when in reality, if you literally did a brain scan, right, the parts of their brain required, that upstairs brain required for executive functioning, doesn't even really start to thrive until like 21. And there's plenty of us walking around don't have it easier either, right? So executive functioning has so many things with it. It's the ability to start a task, to organize a task, and the steps that require it, to stay on task, to be able to continue to have the motivation. So many things go into it, and we just say, go clean your room, right? And we're not setting them up for success. So in order to help that, what I would say is what's helpful is breaking down tasks, really meeting them where they are. So instead of saying, go clean your room, when they're getting old, when they're in those early stages, it really is about modeling. So I'm going to come in there and I'm going to say, hey, you make the bed, I'm going to get the stuff off of the floor, right? You do those things together. And then as they get older, that might be checklists, right? Where my daughter has a checklist for literally every single thing. If she's going to clean the bathroom, it says, do the trash, do the thing, X, Y, and Z. And that could look like checklists, but it also could just look like giving specific, just like orders. You go in the room, you see the bed's not made and there's toys on the floor. Hey, go pick up the toys on the floor and go make the bed, because their brain is not going to break that task. That when they go in the room, they just see a room. They don't know where to start. So that's important. Another thing when it comes to development is emotional regulation. And a lot of us grew up forced to regulate our emotions because there were going to be very real consequences if we didn't. You're going to get a spank and I'm going to take something from you. But that doesn't mean that a child knows how to naturally do it. And that's the brain's response, that fight or flight response to trauma. That's not how brains are supposed to develop. And so when I had a kid and she was throwing tantrums about stuff, I'm like, you're not supposed to be doing that. I didn't do that as a kid. You look at brain science, that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Because again, the frontal lobe is where we're able to process a situation, rational thinking. It is so underdeveloped for a child. You are literally expecting them to be able to do something that they're not able to do. And so it's about modeling. It's about actually giving them tools to develop that habit and to actually grow that part of their brain.
So when a child is throwing a tantrum, what should we be doing? What should parents be doing?
Well, that depends on the phase. It depends on what's going on, why they're throwing a tantrum. But one thing I will say, the way I like to visualize it is that you don't force emotions to go away. Emotions are like a wave, and you have to ride those emotions and ride the wave out. There are things you can do preventatively, like we talked about, boundaries, showing them tools. There are things you can do afterwards, like having a recap and talking about the emotions. When the emotions are here, you got to just be present. You can't talk a child out of their feelings because that takes rationalizing. And so I just try to focus on safety, right? I'm not going to shame you because that's not emotional safety, but I'm also not going to just let you throw stuff because that's not safe for me or your sibling. And I just offer empathy. Empathy isn't about fixing. It's just about presence. Empathy might look like, I'm going to sit here. I'm the leader. I'm regulated. Whatever you're doing, it's not bothering me. Empathy can also be a few words like, I got you. I'm here. We're going to get through this. And eventually it starts to subside. It's difficult for us because we get dysregulated, but it will.
I actually also have a question on. I mean, I know you have two daughters. What are the age difference? What's the age gap?
5 years. I have a 5-year-old and 10-year-old.
Okay, but do you have any advice for like sibling rivalry? Like you typically, when siblings are close in age, that's like such a common thing. I think Vlad went through that as well, and so I know people with that. So any advice or tips there?
First of all, number one, do not take it personally. Oh my goodness, do not choose sides. It's hard because it's like, yeah, you're having a tantrum, but you're hitting my kid. Like, I feel bad for or you just took the toy from my kid. Number one, don't take it personal because now you no longer can be the leader. And if you do take it personal, literally deal with that first. Like, you know what? I'm going to hold on to the toy for a second. I'm going to go think and I'm going to come back and we're going to figure this out. That's number one. Number two, and this is key, you need to be a mediator, not a referee. Okay, so the referee picks sides. The referee says who's right, who's wrong, who's at fault. You can't do that because what that's going to do is now you're the problem solver. Right. How are they going to problem solve next time if you came in and created the solution for them? And so that actually ends up, it'll alleviate it right then, but it's not actually solving the bigger problem. So what I might do instead is mediate. I'm going to ask good questions. I'm going to go beyond what happened. Yeah. So let's say my kid took a toy. Kennedy took the toy from Phoenix. I might say, Kennedy, did you take the toy? She's going to say yes. And I'm going to say, well, Phoenix, are you upset about that? And she's going to say, yes, I'm upset. And I might say, hey, Kennedy, did you want a toy? That's probably why you took it. She'll say yes. And I'll say, well, Phoenix, we share, but you get to decide when she gets a turn. Can you tell me when she's going to get a turn in a reasonable amount of time? And Phoenix might say, okay, I want to play with it for 10 more minutes. And then I'll say, Kennedy, what do you want to do while you wait for 10 minutes? And now I've taught them and shown them how to solve the problem. If I would have came in and said, oh, okay, Phoenix, you got to give her the toy in 10 minutes. We skipped how'd you feel about it. We skipped what would the solution be. We skipped all those things. So I would say sibling rivalry. Number one, expect it. expect it. And number two, don't fix the problem. Show them how to fix the problem.
I love that. I love that
You
answer.
know, I want to say to all parents who are listening to us right now, it's not happening like magic in one day. When you
No.
listen to us, when you start to apply all these principles, it will not happen. Yes, you will have a tantrums, you will try to fix it, and it will not be fixable. Still, they'll be crying at you, they'll be saying go to hell, go this, go there. Don't be upset with it. Don't
Yeah.
be upset. Just understand that this is all fine, all will come. I know myself, you know, when you listen to uh like parenting psychologists or coaches, you think that everything, that's it, this is the strategy, I will do it, and my kid will stop crying right away after I will tell her, please calm down, let me speak with you, this and that. This is not the case.
Absolutely not. And that's why I prefer the term conscious parenting over gentle parenting, because gentle parenting really is the tools and the scripts, and you get so excited to use them and then it doesn't work. Whereas conscious parenting, the idea of being conscious is I'm going to show up to this moment asking the right questions. What's being needed? What am I believing? What am I feeling? What does my kid need in this moment? And when you do that, you're going to know the right tools to use for that moment. And I say, I have a different kid every single day. I'm a different mom every
Yeah.
single day. I have to parent the child in front of me right now. And when you do that, I promise you, it's not magic. There's not a magical tool, but in any situation, we show up our best when we're actually paying attention to the moment, not projecting into the future, not wishing like, oh my God, we had such a good morning. And just stay in the moment, and the right tools are going to come. And then if they don't come, staying in the moment is accepting that this is the kid I have right now. This is what's going on right now. I don't have to force. That's just one of those nights where we didn't get much done. And that's okay.
What about blaming yourself? Because parents also can melt down. This is fine. And a lot of, I mean, I wouldn't say dads, but more for moms, they blame themselves that they melt down, that they didn't realize, they didn't behave correctly. They were not conscious parent at that moment. And a lot
Yeah.
of moms, they are blaming themselves for this.
Yeah. Well, I
The,
first would
the,
say, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I would first try to encourage moms to know that if you are even blaming yourself, then you're ahead of a lot, parent. It's like you are acknowledging that you have things to work on. You have to consciously parent yourself as well. And that comes down to a mix of compassion and boundaries. So I like to say growth and grace. Accepting where you are is really important, because just like with our kids, you can't shame yourself into growth. Like it's the opposite of empowerment. So you have to acknowledge where you are, have compassion for it, and find tools. Like you have to be intentional and adamant about finding the tools that you need. So it has to be both. You have to set yourself up to acknowledge this is where I am. And oftentimes, like I said at the beginning of this call, it's a lot easier when you don't feel alone in your experience. Having community, having other moms that are like, this is normal. Like my kid is doing some outrageous stuff as well. You're not struggling on your own is really helpful. And then, like I said, you have to be willing to find specific tools. So if you have a hard time yelling, you need to learn about some emotional regulation. If you have a hard time with boundaries and discipline, then maybe your executive functioning isn't fully developed and you need to get tools for that. So it has to be a both and. There's grace, but you also have to be willing to grow.
You know, I'm a math and science guy. I love data, and my wife is currently pregnant. She's 4 months in, super excited. But you know, as soon as we knew, all I could do every night before sleeping is just reading about this stat and this data, and will my child be healthy? You know, you just get into this like crazy cycle of questions. But I will say one thing that caught my attention, which I think is such an important topic to talk about, because the solution is education around this, is that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy related cause than white women. That is a 2023 updated stat, literally released by the CDC. So my question is, how do we improve? And I'm sorry, because I know you specialize in as a parenting coach, but it is such an important topic to talk about. So like,
any advice for how do we improve Black maternal health? Are there something that mothers should know about that will reduce this, reduce that will make these stats better?
Yeah. So I will say that my personal experience having children, both children, was absolutely terrible. I did not have advocacy. I did not feel taken care of. And so I think having these conversations where parents actually know, or mothers, Black mothers, actually know their rights and what the process should look like. Just things like, breaking your water without asking, or telling you that you don't have options, forcing you to have a C-section, those kinds of things. I was not aware of those things. You just, you trust the doctor. I'm like, you're the doctor. You should know these things. And so while I don't have a solution on the healthcare side of it, I will say that advocating for ourselves, finding people that look like us and that have experience and compassion for Black moms is really important. Being able to have a birth plan immediately when somebody's not going with that birth plan, knowing there are other options. This isn't your only option, because a lot of times we simply don't advocate for ourselves because we think that we can't. And so that's honestly where I would start, is researching your actual options. And I know a lot of midwives, and oftentimes these things that happen to moms are so preventable. And I don't know if it's a lack of education. I don't know if it's a lack of understanding and empathy, but they often are. And I think that the more that we have these conversations within our own community, the more that we'll be able to increase our confidence in being able to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, advocating for yourself is by far like the best advice. And yes, every incident here, like majority of them are preventable. There's no secret ingredient here where why this is happening at a higher rate. Everything here is preventable. And so so advocating for yourself, I think, is like 100% the right solution and the best solution. If you're experiencing pain and you don't think it's normal, you need to call your doctor. Your doctor tells you, hey, it's okay. Doctor, I'm sorry, but this doesn't feel right. Can I come in? So just advocating for yourself, because it's true. It's true. And it's also heartbreaking. But thank you so much for sharing that, and also your personal story, because it's a serious topic. And I feel like again, I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like one of the solutions is just talking about it and spreading that information. Destini, I do want to ask you one last question that I have for you, which I love asking for all the guests on the show, which is, who has been the most strongest or most inspiring person in your life, and what lessons have you learned from them?
That's a good question. I will say that the strongest person in my life was definitely my mother. And the biggest lesson that I learned from her is that strength isn't always about your external accomplishments. It's not always about what you can do. And that sometimes strength is being able to do the thing that isn't expected. Sometimes it's not having to meet the expectation. Sometimes strength is being able to say no. And my mom was so strong that she did all the things. She never said no. And that lesson really taught me that when we do that, it actually deteriorates our strength in other areas. And so I learned to focus on things that I actually value and be strong in those areas, and be okay with not doing it all. It's kind of that like, jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing.
Yeah,
and for me, balance is about, I can balance the most important things. You give me my top 3, I got that. If I feel like as a mom, I got to do all the things, no, and I'm going to feel bad. So for me, what I learned from my mom's experience of strength is that true strength comes from being able to dial in and focus on what really matters to me, and being intentional about putting effort in those places.
Wow, Destini, thank you so much for sharing that. I love listening to every guest has their own special story.
And that's what we're all about, is listening to the personal stories to really connect. And that's, I think, again, that's how we really connect with everybody. That's what humans have to offer. Destini, thank you so much for being with us here today. And I do apologize for the technical difficulties on my end. Destini, please let our listeners know, or viewers know, anyone who's watching this, where can they find you? Is it a social channel? Do you have a website? Where can they find more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am obsessed with content. So if you just want some quick, easy sound bites that are practical, my Instagram and TikTok are Destini Ann. And then if you want to know about any coaching or classes that are coming up, get my book, see the TED Talk, you can go to destiniann.com.
Destini, thank you so much.
Thanks so
Thank
much.